Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Paul Macarthur. Today, I'm asking the expert, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Director of Qualifications at Qualification Network, Mark Barber. Mark, good afternoon, and thank you very much as my first guest coming on and putting up with me today. How are you?
Absolutely fine. Thank you very much for asking me to come along.
Good, brilliant. Thank you. Looking well?
Yeah, well, you can't help but enjoy the sunlight. I mean, I'm currently working from a log cabin which I've set up in my office as an additional home. So technically, I'm outside quite a lot at the moment. So yeah, a bit of best of both worlds.
Mark, I gave you a great introduction in terms of your current profile and what you do. Just explain to everybody a bit about yourself and how you got into the industry, and for people wanting to get into the industry, a little bit of information and history about you.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully I can add some value to that to people that are just moving into the industry. Currently, as Paul's already alluded, I'm one of the directors at Qualifications Network, which is a UK-based awarding organisation. Very long history in the background, but I started right at the bottom, right grassroots. And I think I was a doorman when I was about 17 years old. I shouldn't necessarily actually been in the club, but I was looking after it years ago. This is well before licensing kicked in and all that side of the business. So we should be highly frowned upon now. But obviously, onwards and upwards through all the ranks of dealing with that. I moved and specialised into major events and close protection side of things for quite a few years. And ended up working for some multinational security companies. I've also ended up as a qualifications consultant, an expert for City and Guilds in the past. Only just recently finished over there for when I came over here to Qualifications Network. And yeah, it all starts as right at the entry level. So when you first move into the industry, whether it's a security guard, whether it's a door supervisor or an event steward, there is a career path in front of you, and it can be very, very enjoyable. As you get the rough with the smooth, but it is very fulfilling on a personal level to be able to move onwards and upwards to the point where you're in the point where you can influence the industry and put some value back into it. It's what you should actually given me to start with.
So has training always been a passion of yours, Mark, or you preferred more of the operational frontline role, or does training sort of come over that?
Yeah, I think it's gone hand in hand, to be honest with you, Paul. I think one of my old business partners when I used to run my own events, operational security company, he was the former Assistant Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire, and he was very highly involved with the Police National Framework. And that side of things really appealed to me, especially when it come down to the identifying best practice and being able to find a way of communicating that amongst your own staff and measuring their performance. And I think that was pretty much what kick-started the journey off, really, when it comes to the training development. And as you get a little bit older and a little bit more tired, you don't really fancy dodging the rain and the alcohol these days. So you find yourself driving the desk a little bit more.
It's watered down now, the alcohol, so you're okay. For us frontliners, still, the alcohol is better than what it used to be. So in terms of QNUK, you're an Ofcol regulated awarding organisation. What do you offer in terms of sort of training and development for, let's say grassroots security officers right up to sort of management and even director level to myself?
Sure. Okay. Well, it's quite new side of the department. I mean, Qualifications Network, for folks that don't know it, it's a well-recognised awarding organisation in the UK, but we have centres that are approved to deliver our qualifications globally. Very, very well established in the first aid, health and safety, some of the educational qualifications, risk assessment qualifications, and health and safety in general. They've also got a very good footprint with the mental health at work side of things as well. Now, the reason I came over to QNUK was the CEO, Rob Shalhoub, has known me for quite a few years and heard I was available, so sort of come over and potentially add some value to the organisation, especially with the security sector. So that's only been with us for, now since I've been here, so about a year, as we've actually started to build that up. So it's an evolving thing. It's quite exciting. So we're finding that a number of specialist security training providers are coming to us nowadays to work with me and the team to see what we can do to develop new qualifications where there are skills gaps, or look at specialist qualifications where there are significant gaps in the industry. So where we talk about the spread of qualifications, yes, we've got the entry-level ones. We're absolutely necessary. It's where I start, it's where you started, and everybody else here today started. And we've looked at them and we thought, okay, well, what we need to do is apply some of our best practice, some of the things that we've learned over the years through mistakes and through things that have gone well. And that's not just from a learner's point of view, that's from a training provider's point of view as well. Because some of the difficulties you have as a training provider sometimes can be to meet the methods that are required to assess a particular criteria if that doesn't quite suit the environment which you've got your learners working. So we've added a degree of flexibility in that to find ways that training providers can look at delivering this knowledge and skills and behaviours within the qualifications to suit the environment the learner's in. Because there's no point if you're working in a particular environment learning about something completely different and then trying to apply that into your current environment. It just doesn't work. So we've gone with that ethos, and we currently have the Spectator Safety Suite. I think we will move on to sort of discuss that a bit later on. What else have we got? We've got vehicle searching in there. We've got security management. We've got understanding security management. We've got behavioural detection analysis, which is a really sort of fun qualification to be had, and a lot in the pipeline for this year.
I just recently undertook that qualification with yourself, and Rick did also. What interested me about QNUK, yes, we're members of other awarding organisations, but joining with you, it was very much that you took the focus in dealing with us as an end user, as well as our compliance and what we are delivering and how we are delivering. And that really pushed me further to join your organisation in terms of the back-end support that we receive as a business, the seamless transaction of us registering candidates with yourself, and the outcomes and the marking and certification was second to none. So I'm very pleased what we've seen as a company in terms of using QNUK. So well done on that.
Thank you for that, for us. That's kind of you.
You're welcome. So Mark, moving on, under COVID, what changes are you currently seeing within the training industry at the moment, and what sort of reasonable adjustments have you made as an awarding organisation?
Now, that is a very challenging question. Initially, you think, yes, it could be an objective thing. I can give you some exact answers. But the truth behind it is, if we focus on right here, right now, what's going to suit us the most commercially for this moment in time, if we were to move in that absolute direction, what we're going to do is cause us, not just as an awarding organisation, but the training providers, a huge problem when we come out of COVID. I'll give you an example of that. If we were to move every qualification that we offered online, what is the effect of that going to be after the COVID crisis? Are people going to return to the classrooms? I possibly think it's going to be a big drop and a bit of an issue there, because yes, we absolutely embrace distance learning, and we have got some qualifications that are knowledge based that we said, yeah, absolutely, that's no problem. So you can deliver them as we are talking now. We can go through a Zoom meeting, we can go through Skype or any other platform, and then we can work on portfolios evidence between ourselves and the learners, and it works really, really nicely. However, there is a dynamic which is missing. And a dynamic is that ability to be in a classroom environment, to talk to your peers, to actually have these little impromptu discussions. Because on here, if you are delivering, it does have to be quite scripted to keep it in line with where you're going. And then it's the ability to actually show somebody, to explain somebody, to actually feel what a certain situation is. An example would be if you're middle of a security course, why don't you just get up and have a walk around and do a patrol together? And while we're out there, let's look at some fire signs. Let's look at some security problems. Look at some vulnerable points. And you learn a lot more in that environment than you will through an online medium. And so what we've done is we've made an executive decision with our quality and standards committee, really. It's called a governance committee with us, to say, yes, we can allow certain qualifications which are purely knowledge-based to be delivered online and with remote assessments, no problem whatsoever, as long as it doesn't degrade the ability for people to get back to the classrooms after the COVID crisis. And it doesn't distract from the quality that the learner has got from pre-COVID to during COVID. So, when you've got a qualification, it means the same. You've been measured the same, and it's got the same value. What we wouldn't want to do is make some adjustments now where you will have a tranche of learners that have done a remote qualification, and that actual certificate is less valid than the one they would have had prior. Yeah. So it has been a very complex series of decisions to make, and I'm very glad that we didn't initially just rush and say, let's shift everything online and hope for the best, because as you can imagine, it's going to not be in the best interest for the industry across the board. I really don't.
So recently, I've seen a huge uptake and a huge increase in online training from CPD. You and I and Rick Baker, my training director, spoke recently in terms of the SIA allowing delivery of the security SIA qualification online, because there's no no physical intervention unit included in that. You and I spoke about it. There was a mass sort of media publicity and people going, oh, this is not a good idea and this is a great idea and everything else. I understand now that Highfields today have withdrawn from carrying out any further participation in the online SIA qualification. That's still correct, Rick?
Yeah, they said that last week was the cut-off for when they were testing the pilot scheme of delivering the online SIA qualification.
So that's now ended. So it'd be interesting to see the results that will come back from that, whether it has worked. There was a couple of other training providers out there that did go and deliver the online part of the SIA qualification for security. For me personally, I think it's a great innovation. I think it's a good idea. It enables people now to, if they're out of work or been furloughed, to sit on a security course to get an insight into the industry. I don't think it's definitely the way forward. I think everyone was expecting a huge shortage of security personnel during lockdown. It sort of peaked, it went up, then it's really, really dropped now. I don't think long term it will be the best approach, in my opinion. There's other courses out there I feel that would suit an online delivery method. But like you say, if you've got a cohort of, say, 10 or 12 new candidates coming into the industry, being bored on a webinar or being bored being taught by like what we're doing now, or having a tutor in the classroom that will actually walk you around a live center or walk you around a factory or walk you around an external part of the building and say, these are security hazards, these are fire hazards, these are health and safety hazards. I feel that's the best way of teaching and delivering, instead of just basically being in that classroom. And I think you lose the learner throughout that as well, but I think the interaction part of being with that classroom is important, especially in today's climate with security qualifications. You've got to have that instructor reaction. I think it may change. I think we're going to come out of this and businesses are going to look completely different in terms of delivering and running their businesses more on technology like we're doing now. I wanted to set this up originally face-to-face. I've had to delay it, so we've gone online. So, I've adapted to that. But I do think there is a market for it, but I don't think there should be a huge push in terms of certain courses that can be delivered online in that way.
I think that's very sensible, Paul. And the whole concept of the delivering the SI security guard online, I think it's a good idea to fulfill a desperate requirement right now. If we have a shortage in the industry, we need to find a reasonable way to approach a predominantly knowledge-based qualification. It's the right solution for now. But I think, as you say, that is the key word, is for now. And the quality of training provision, I don't think anyone can disagree that it is a little bit less when you are sort of at distance. However, as I said earlier, this is why we have released certain qualifications to the online domain, because they are knowledge-based qualifications, or parts of qualifications which are knowledge-based. And some people do actually learn better from doing their own research, spending a little bit of time on sessions like this with people like ourselves, and sitting in the comfort of their own home to do such a thing. I think that's absolutely fine. Where they're blended qualifications, absolutely. Yeah, let's break away the knowledge. Let's do that as one part thing that you can do at distance with no problem at all. And let's pop the observations and let's pop the activities into something we can deliver at a later date, which is something we've really looked at with the spectator safety pool, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's a good interim medium, and I think it's also a very good medium to reach people internationally on a permanent basis. So we're not just locked down to UK at the moment. You know, with the technology, we can reach the world, and we've seen this happening with some of our centres. They're reaching out to people from parts of the world I didn't know exist until recently.
Do you think, Mark, with the current security qualifications in the market to obtain SIA licenses, there needs to be a rebranding in terms of what the content is currently inside these courses? For example, we'll take the close protection qualification. It holds no physical intervention part in it, but yet guys and girls are out protecting an asset or protecting an individual or high net worth that they haven't been scoped or tested in terms of physical intervention. Do you think there needs to be a complete revamp of all the qualifications within the SIA family at the moment?
Good qualification and timely put, because that is currently what is happening. And there was supposed to be a new release of SIA banks of qualifications in September, which we can imagine is going to be pushed back now until 2021, obviously, because the ability to really get to town with the consultations with the employers as well as the providers and the auditing organisations. So yeah, there is a restructure which is useful. Now, excuse me. On that particular note, Paul, I think one thing the industry has often missed, and I do like to remind everybody in general, that the license link qualifications are literally just to get your card to go and work. That's it. It's entry level and it gets you in the door, and that's it. So I don't believe that the license to practice qualification should be the full spectrum. It's A, it's information overload, and B, I think it disadvantages people because people learn more when they're actually out doing the job itself. You know, you do your classroom learning, but your real learning starts the moment you put your foot on the ground and you start out that work activity. Now, that is where, to me, we need to focus, and this is where I have focused since I came over to QNUK, is what do we do next? How do we develop our strengths and abilities and knowledge and capability into specialist areas? Or as you said there, with the physical intervention element of the license to practice for the close protection. Now, that certainly can be accommodated at an early stage with the close protection, absolutely. You know, that's how I personally used to deliver it in the past, by building that sort of model into it, as long as it met the assessment criteria, plus more. There's the key word, is plus more. So let's get the license to practice done. And whatever industry in, so not just security, but any industry you go in, and this is a license to practice. Get your boots on the ground, and then let's look at some development qualifications to actually take you onwards, upwards to excellence.
Sure, good point. I think people getting into the industry, they get that bit of plastic, and they think that's it. I'm qualified now, and you know I can do this job, and I can go and protect a high net worth individual, or go on tour with this artist, or you know I can go and work on this club in this store, and it seemed really to forget any CPD or anything to sort of escalate their qualifications and their skills upwards. On the ground, boots on the ground, that's where you're going to get your full knowledge from. But at the same time, I do believe that there should be some sort of formal evaluation every 12 months for everybody, including myself, you know, as a license holder. You know, being an owner of a company is great, but, you know, I think everyone should have some sort of formal 12 months additional refresher training, first aid, fire awareness, counter-terrorism. So that's, you know, the Counter-Terrorism Act is now free online for everybody to use, where beforehand it was kept so far away from, you know, companies like myself. It was only PLC-based organisations, and I lobbied, and in fact, if I remember rightly, I was one of the first ever limited companies allowed to use Project Griffin back in the day on a business case study that I had to put through in terms of the amount of crowd safety and spectator safety work we were using. It was a no-brainer. Look, if you're gonna withdraw me as a business owner from teaching my staff in terms of counter-terrorism and terrorism awareness, you've got 500-600 staff members here that are extra eyes and ears on the ground. And we was accepted for that, and I'm glad to see that ACT is now available for anybody, not just in the security industry, and I think it's a must. I think even the kids at school, in 5th and 6th formers, should be part of the curriculum, that they understand this and they learn, you know, the ACT counter-terrorism model. It's online, it's free for people to use. Radicalisation as well, I think is very, very important, that we include that within our plethora of training throughout our industry.
Brilliant. Yeah, I fully support that. Absolutely.
So moving on, Mark, to a favourite topic of mine.
Go on.
Spectator safety.
Ooh.
So apart from Highfields, I don't believe, and I may be wrong, you may put me wrong, there's nobody else out there allowing and offering online e-learning level 2 spectator safety. Am I wrong, Mark?
You've got me. You've caught me there. Do I know the answer? I don't know the answer to that right now, Paul. So I'm to think there now. So I was looking skywards. Is there anyone else? I don't know. It's top of my head.
Sitting there today, there's only 2 organisations that I know: is Highfield and yourself.
Okay.
That allows the level 2 spectator safety to be delivered online, and you and I spoke about it, and you kindly allowed us, after going through various hurdles and hoops with you, that we can deliver through our e-learning portal the modules required to carry out the level 2 spectator safety. And we've got various different cohorts now on the system, which are going through and doing very, very well. Once we're out of lockdown, we will then carry out the simulated and the 2 live assessments.
Great.
Obviously, under the Green Guides, there's currently consultation that's been released, and again, that's been withheld and put back. That there was going to be some additional changes and some optional units coming into fruition. And the Sports Ground Safety Authority carried out a great consultation document. I participated in it, and one of the things I participated in putting forward that a change needs to be made is that all stewards should receive physical intervention as a minimum standard, as they are front line. They're the first people you meet going into a stadium. They're the first person you meet coming out of the stadium or a festival or an event. Do you think, Mark, that the Green Guide has got it right in terms of constantly reviewing and looking for updated changes in the spectator safety qualification? And do you recommend that there should be additional modules being added into this?
I think that's a really good question. The constant review is absolutely necessary, and I know there's a lot of people, eyes roll when it's because they reviewed it again, or they've changed this, they've changed that. But the world's changing. The way we operate as people in society has changed. The way that crowds behave have changed quite significantly over the years. Yeah. And the fact that the SGSA are keeping on top of that, I think that's absolutely spot on. And also looking at it's always about, we talk about risks and threat. We think about risks and threat in regards to, they're always the current subject. It's always terrorism. It's not necessarily always terrorism. It is the trends and the social norms when it comes down to the ritualized combat that goes within the crowds. I mean, if you take the clock back to the 80s, you'd find that certainly in football matches, predominantly, you'd have crews and firms which are well known.
Who's your favourite football team?
I don't follow football. No, rugby fan. But I've been involved on the spectator safety side of things quite a few years, which is good. It means I can be completely impartial. And used to turn up. I had no badge on me. I had no badge of honour or no allegiance. So I didn't really care who wins, who didn't. But that was good. Yeah, it's changed. I mean, if you goes back to that last point, that if you were to look at the dynamics of the crowds in regards to what you'd consider a threat in the 1980s to what, Christ, that's nearly 40 years ago. He's 40 years ago. Right. To what you consider a threat now, it has changed. Not just, okay, maybe the badges still exist. I get that, but the method of operation has changed, and the threats that method of operation brings with it has equally changed. And I absolutely support and applaud anybody which is doing the best to keep up with the current risks and threats within that particular sector.
Another one of the operational units are looking about introducing within the level 2 is first aid, and yep. Again, I support this throughout. Stewarding is been used throughout the years as a quick force of labour, cheap labour that's untrained, and I don't take that any way away from stewarding whatsoever. I think they do an absolute fantastic job. We have got some brilliant stewards employed within our organisation, and mandatory, we put them through their level 2, we put them through their acts counter-terrorism. Rick will run various different conflict management and physical interventions because we work on the ground with our staff. So we are seeing a change in dynamics with the public going into football, music, horse racing. And we've got to equip these guys and girls more. You know, I personally believe that they should be licensed. You know, and I'll be a big advocate of pushing that with some sort of legislation or pushing it through with the 2001 Private Security Act, that stewarding should be recognised as a licensable activity. I think there's a big loophole that companies will exploit that in terms of you're a steward, you can't get a DS badge, or you can't get an SIA badge, but we'll use you on a search queue, or we'll use you on an emergency exit door. But I really do think it's now time that, you know, we look at this and start going and recognise the stewarding. Great, we're all recognised as key workers now under the COVID crisis, and the SIA done a fantastic job to get that push forward. Will that continue after lockdown? And I think the same needs to be recognised in terms of our stewarding capability. If we take Martin's Law, we take what happened in Manchester and the Manchester attack, and some of the stewards there were absolutely on the money. For what they did, they saved people's lives, you know, egressing, getting people out, dealing with the emergency services. I think it's time that they need to be recognised and brought up within the security family as a whole to say, okay, fine, you want to become a steward, here's a licensable role, 5 years, 7858 checks, credit checks, history checks, medical training should be issued to them, conflict management on top of the standard level 2 qualification.
Perfect. So that actually echoes what I was saying earlier, Paul, in regards to you get your license to practice, and that's considered the level 2 spectator safety as your license to practice. Once you've actually, isn't technically, but it's the qualification, you need to be able to go and perform that operation. That's your boots on the ground. And what is it that our training providers and what is it that employers are doing to make sure their staff have learned some exceptional skills above and beyond that? And I fully support that. I mean, even nowadays where I've retired from the operational side of things, I still go to events as a punter these days. A spectator, it's great. It's wonderful. I went with the wife to quite a few gigs at some of the big arenas over the past few years, it's been so strange because I used to spend all my life standing on the back of the stage looking out. Now I'm actually sitting in the crowd looking up.
Paying customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first person you turn to, the first person you see every time when you've got a question or you see people in the crowd with problems, it are the stewards. And
can you hold my pint for a minute, please?
I'm one of these nice people in the crowd. Don't worry about that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are the people that you will turn to when you need it the most. Yeah. Especially, you won't really know that until you get to a point where there is an emergency. And that is not just talking from a public point of view, but I'm also talking from my history of operations director, that every time I had to deal with a major incident, I needed that team to be above and beyond my response teams to actually get themselves in position to deal with the bigger threat, which is the crowd surges or the panic that goes on within a crowd, because they're the ones that are in the right place at the right time and the first point of contact for the audience. So if we can actually get well qualified, well experienced, well trained staff, such as the staff you're producing, Paul, through SGC, to be amongst everybody, as soon as they get a bit in their ear that says, okay, we've got a situation, we need to deal with it, and they know what to do, that is going to not just save lives, but it's also going to make the whole experience in the spectator safety industry phenomenal. And the reason for that is because we haven't just done the basics. We've gone to the basics, but you're now looking at, okay, what else can we do? Really good.
And my final question, Mark, in terms of QNUK, what's the future? What can we look forward to in terms of possibilities of new qualifications and new courses coming out? What's on the agenda in the next 12 months? I know it's obviously difficult where we're currently in, but knowing you guys there, you're thinking ahead for the future. What can we expect?
Oh, okay. So I have to now think, what can I say? What can I not say?
Without giving too much away, what can we see in terms of sort of potential?
Okay, right. So we have been since word go, but we certainly are now continuing to work with some very specialist providers in regards to real niche qualifications at quite high levels, which are fantastic. They're out there, and it's very impressive stuff happening there. We're talking about general public release. What we can look at is, I'll give you a couple of snippets that I've written down. I've got a loss prevention coming out soon, which you might enjoy, because the skill set for a security officer within retail is markedly different to what you'd learn on the security officer training for your license to practice. Yeah. So this is the next step, as we discussed. We need to know what the additional skills are to do that role.
Would that incorporate, Mark, an element of sort of store detective work within the LP side as well?
Huge.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's something which I've spent time with another multinational many years ago, and I travelled all around Europe to different flagship stores to not just train the staff, but also listen to the staff and understand where they were struggling for knowledge, where they were struggling to be able to assert themselves in certain situations, certain environments, and understand the legislation, the processes, their rights and their responsibilities. Well, I think it's probably the first worry of anybody which gets their security guard license and goes into that environment, say, well, you walk into it, what do I do? This is completely different. If this person's now, are they committing fraud? Are they not? What can I do? Can I search the bag? Can I not search the bag? Can I detain them? Can I not detain them? Where can I chase them? Can I not chase them? A lot of questions there. And I think that we've gone some way to address that, to give some real robust knowledge to the learner. But also think about broadly as well, what is loss prevention? It's not just about catching people that are up to no good. Yeah. It's about, there's a lot of stock in there. I mean, how are we making sure that's being looked after in the right way, in the right place? How can we look at shrinkage? How can we look at internal theft? Everything like that. So it's to make sure that anyone in that industry becomes an asset in regards to shrinkage protection, which is ultimately the profit and loss for that business across the board. And if that person then in that environment can actually markedly make a big difference on the bottom line, then surely that's good for everybody. So that's the new one coming through. We've got what can I talk about? Can't talk about that one.
You can. There's nobody watching, I promise you. No, go on.
Okay, we've got some other sort of quite specialist ones as well for people that are involved in management. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but involved in the management of staff in general, but some of the situations that you're definitely going to need someone with that capability, capacity to handle certain situations or investigate certain situations or monitor things. So there's a lot more in there as well. But also, let's not forget that I think anybody that is in a managerial role that has got a team of staff beneath them, they are equally as responsible for them staff's development. It doesn't necessarily mean come to us and do a qualification. What am I saying? I should tell everyone to do it? Not really. What I am saying is learning development isn't just through awarding organisations. As much as I wish it was, commercially, that's absolutely the right thing to say. But you've also got to remember, what is it that you can add as a manager to an individual's abilities and performance from what you've learned over the years? I mean, us people that have been around the block a few times, we've made some cracking mistakes, and we've made some cracking good things that have happened. Yeah. And if we can pass that on, we're going to save that individual from the punch in the face that we didn't need to get, but we can also tell them how you manage the situation without it going horribly wrong as well. Or you've come across something which has been a little bit quirky. These are things that went well and didn't go so well. So I think it's very important now let's focus above and beyond our initial entry-level qualifications. Think about how are we going to get ourselves from entry-level to the top tier. And we can get to the top tier through many routes. Formal qualification absolutely form part of it, which is great. It's something to show employers and shows people which are paying for security staff to say these are formally recognised, but also show career development pathways outside of that as well to support somebody's abilities and recognise them.
Brilliant. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for being my first guest on Ask the Expert. And keep safe. I'll see you very, very soon. And thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much indeed.